This is Musical Talk.
Musical Talk.
The UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. I'm sitting across from Antonia. Hello, Antonia.
Hello.
How are you?
Not too bad.
Good. A very, very, very special episode today. You are going to hear an interview that I thought I lost, that was recorded 3 years ago with legendary... You're shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head? I said I thought I'd lost it. It involves a computer dying and backups and things, but whatever. I thought I'd lost with legendary songwriter Tony Hatch. Now, Tony Hatch is famous possibly for writing all of Petula Clark's hit songs like Downtown, also the Emmerdale theme, the Neighbours theme, Home and Away theme, and you know, he is one of the greatest songwriters. And I also talked to our old friend of the podcast, David Wood, famous playwright, who's I think got about 12 plays playing at the moment. He's the Roald Dahl adapter that we talked to many times before. He and Tony wrote a musical in the 70s called Rock Nativity, slightly unheard of. It's one of Cameron Mackintosh's kind of early shows. So we hear the story behind that, as well as some songs from a demo done by the National Youth Music Theatre. But first, Tonya, I want to talk about a show that we both adore. Yeah. It's a show that I've recently seen redone by the Leicester Curve. I didn't see it at Leicester Curve. I saw it at the Wimbledon Theatre, directed by Craig Revel Horwood. This is a production of Sister Act that is touring the country with our lovely friend Rosemary Ash and also Alexandra Burke playing Dolores Van Cartier. We both saw the Palladium production, didn't we? Share your thoughts on that.
Such a long time ago now. I love that production. You
don't forget a show like Sister Act, though.
No, it was my first time at the Palladium as well.
Okay.
So that was really exciting to kind of see a show for the first time in such an iconic venue. I loved Sister Act. I think my favourite thing about it was that it was still quite close to the film, but there was still new things about it to sort of interest new people that hadn't sort of...
like a whole different era to set it in.
Exactly. I was blown away by it, actually. I think I hadn't seen anything in a really long time that I really liked that much.
Cried?
I did cry. I was so overwhelmed, I cried.
I saw it loads of times, and on a complete whim, I was at Whoopi Goldberg's first night of that show, just because that was a night we happened to put tickets for. And when she came out on stage, there was a 2.5 minute standing ovation, and she hadn't even done anything yet, so that was fabulous. Sister Act is touring the country, as we said, in a new actor-musician production directed by Craig Revel Horwood. Now, you're a big fan of Strictly Come Dancing, aren't you?
Yeah, my guilty pleasure.
Sister Act it's been scaled down, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Bits been rewritten, some for the good, some for the not so good. I want to talk first about the actor-musician element, because it kind of makes sense if they're playing instruments.
Yeah.
But what I thought it didn't work that well is when they're playing instruments, when they're meant to be singing big chorus moment. They have other people also up on the gallery playing, I think, keyboard and drums, and sometimes the characters who aren't playing in that scene will come out in the top and play the required instruments. Rosie Ash, but most of the time, changed to a glockenspiel, which was quite sweet. It worked really, really beautifully, especially when the nuns are learning about music.
Yeah, they're rehearsing and whatnot, yeah.
But my question is, if they can play instruments, why can't they sing? I could use myself as an example here. Some people just can't sing. Another thing I had, which struck me as slightly odd with the show, and it works on a dramatic point, didn't work for an auditory point, was the nuns don't sing in tune until halfway through Raise Your Voice.
Yeah.
And that does not work at all in the rewritten number, what you and I would know as How I Got the Calling to the Lord, which they've changed to something else.
I really liked that number. I'm gutted that's gone.
Yeah. And it just didn't work because they're all screeching.
Yeah.
It's a skill to be able to sing out of tune, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. With the original production, okay, they sing a number before they learn to sing, but I think you meant to, something about musicals you meant to do is suspend your disbelief for a few minutes.
It's almost as if Craig has taken the fact that they're playing instruments live, so let's have it the fact that they're actually singing these songs live. And it just didn't work because it wasn't a pleasant sound. Yes, the musical has the the original Palladium production has the diegetic moment when they're coming on and they're chanting, but also in the song the head nun sings, we shall call her, Here Within These Walls, they sing a beautiful choral part over that. Yes, it doesn't make sense, but the fact that these nuns can't sing yet, so why are they singing in the abbey? But it could be another group of nuns, for example, that can
I don't think
sing.
it's meant to be. It's just, I don't know, that kind of doesn't make sense, actually. That's really odd.
It's difficult, isn't it?
I think they should...
It's like Little Mermaid on stage. She can't talk. So why is she singing?
Yeah.
Because we know it's her internal thinking that we're hearing.
I never actually, when I saw the original production, when they did that original number and they were singing before they'd learned to sing, thought, why can they all sing in tune? It's because they're in a musical and they're singing as though they're having a conversation.
But they're still singing Latin liturgical stuff.
No, this is the other number.
Oh, okay.
The
How
other
I
number.
Got the Call.
Yeah, exactly. I think you never sat through that in the original production going, why can they all sing now when they're not supposed to sing yet? You didn't think that. You just thought, they're just singing a song because it's in a musical. I don't think they had to change that and make it out of tune. Like you say, because it just makes it unpleasant to listen to. But yeah, it is interesting there is that liturgical bit before. Yeah, maybe it is meant to be another set of nuns. I don't know, but they never made that very clear.
Maybe we're overthinking it. I don't know, but it just didn't strike me as a great idea because I like Glenn Slater as a lyricist, and especially I remember I know I keep going back to the Palladium production, but it got so many laughs, that song, and this song just fell dead on its face in the audience.
I don't know why they changed that. Why would they do that? It's Bless Our Show's gone, hasn't it?
No, that's still there.
Is that gone in the American production?
They've given Big Head Nun a bigger number in Act 2 called You Haven't Got a Prayer, which works really well because who played the role originally in London?
Hancock.
Sheila Hancock cannot sing, so they never wrote
I think she did so wonderful with what she had.
Yeah. But they gave the character a bigger song in Act 2, which is very funny. The show opens differently. She is auditioning for Curtis, even though they are in a relationship, as opposed to just performing in the nightclub.
That's weird, because in the film she's actually a star performing, isn't it? Oh, that's quite strange.
It is odd when you have act musicians in shows, because you have a policeman with a gun and a guitar, and suddenly they'll just start playing it, and you've really got to suspend your disbelief there. But where Craig Revel Horwood really did some very funny choreography is there's a song in the show called Lady in the Long Black Dress, which is the three goons singing about how they're going to essentially seduce nuns. There's some nuns standing on stage, and let's just say they use the necks of their guitars in a very interesting manner in this song, which was very amusing. I like that very much. The show is camp as anything. I mean, Sister Act's camp anyway, but when you have Craig Revel Horwood directing it and choreographing it, you can imagine how far it goes. It just reminded me when I saw the show how much fun it is, and it was so nice to see it again. There's some great new lines in the book. I think the book is a lot better than it was originally.
What I liked about the original production is how the story moved on so fluidly. I think that was something that was down to staging. Was it the same with the... Because obviously you mentioned it was scaled back, but was it the staging as fluid? Because it was very cinematic when we watched it. Each scene really flowed into the next one so well.
Yeah, it wasn't as technologically amazing as it was at the Palladium.
That's what made me cry, by the way.
How the hell do these set pieces keep appearing? The automation software for the Palladium production to develop cost £85,000.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know it's not going to be obviously as spectacular, but what I'm interested in is was it fluid?
Yes, and there were no projections, which I also liked, which is a lazy way of doing set design now. It was very fluid. It's just a well-written show. There's a lot of craft going on. I think Raise Your Voice is still one of the best...
One of my favourite musical theme songs ever.
But it's funny, the show I saw before that... not on the same day, but in the kind of same time scale, was School of Rock, which is the same story, with the same lyricist. And there's a song in it called You're in the Band, which serves exactly the same purpose. Do
you think that works a bit better, with the musicians obviously playing most of the score, but then obviously the actors coming in and playing, the children coming in and playing little bits and bobs?
I didn't mind the actor-musician element for the nuns. It was when you had other characters playing instruments, which I thought was a bit strange, because they're just standing there with them on stage doing their scene, and then they play the song. That guy has changed, which is Eddie's I Want song. Eddie is the love interest for Dolores Van Cartier. He's white in this role, so I don't know if that has any influence into the dance break, but Craig Revel Horwood changed it into a kind of Saturday Night Fever kind of moment in that song where the tempo really picked up, which worked a lot better, I think. They still had the wonderful moment with him ripping the clothes off and it being changing. So there are bits that they kind of... you have to put into the show, and I think that is one of the moments. They don't have the Pope rising from the pit.
What?
Because there isn't a pit, obviously.
Still.
Our good friend Jonathan Cohen saw it, and I saw it with Jonathan. He also saw this production, loved it as well. But he said it, and the same with School of Rock, what really annoys him in shows like this is when classical music is considered boring and not joyous, and it doesn't spread the message that you need to kind of have rock or disco or something, or gospel to make it. What's your view on that as a message?
Yeah, I mean, when the nuns when she's taught them to sing properly, and they sing that really choral bit of music before, what's the...
Take Me to Heaven.
Yeah, Take Me to Heaven.
The reprise.
Yeah. You just... that bit always makes me feel like, oh, it's so nice. But that's not the point of the musical, I don't think.
No.
But really, it bugs me when people say that opera and classical music is boring, being an opera singer.
But it is.
I don't think that... I don't think that's what they're trying to say.
No.
It's just that they're trying to say that anyone can sing, anyone can find music enjoyable.
If you were to see Sister Act today, knowing nothing about it and being a fan of the film, would you be disappointed that it didn't have the Motown songs in it?
I know lots of people are. Initially, before I saw it, I think I was actually a little bit disappointed My God wasn't going to be in there. I really love some of the adaptations they did for the film.
Do you know why they couldn't use them?
Probably rights and things like that, surely.
Because Motown, the musical, was being planned.
Oh, right, that's why.
Which has every Motown song ever written in it.
Yeah. So I think initially I was a bit disappointed, but then actually seeing what Alan Menken had done with the score...
And to set it in the 70s is a very clever idea as well, because it doesn't age it. The films are set in the 90s.
Yeah.
And oh boy, Sister Act 2 stinks of the 90s, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. What do you think of the performers then? Because obviously Alexandra Burke is
very, very surprisingly good in it. Her acting was really, really, really impressive. The songs are very low for her.
So they've taken them down.
Which I don't mind.
We had a look at the Sister Act score recently, and I was saying actually how low and actually how high it is.
Yeah.
But I think Bettina Miller was obviously able to do all those amazing high bits, to get up to those high bits in sort of... Because she didn't necessarily belt them, and they were kind of... well, she did a lot of belting in the show, but a lot of the high notes were...
Head voice.
Head voice, yeah. So, and
I'm learning.
Yeah, head voice, you are learning.
There's a bit in the score, especially in Raise Your Voice, which I love, where she sings like it's God's Rolls Royce, but much better than I can. Up the octave, and that was down in her chest voice for that moment, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
She sung the song Sister Act really, really beautifully, and that got a round of applause during the song, which was quite exciting. But, Alex, the reason these people are here to see this show, and this reason the show has sold out everywhere, is because of Alexandra Burke.
Yeah, so they can get away with taking it down several semitones.
And they can get away with casting a TV celebrity person.
I saw something I've written on Facebook probably about a couple of years ago, actually, saying that she was the only guest that had an X Factor that could actually sing in tune. So she's a good person to get in the role in the sense that she can actually sing. You know, a lot of TV or pop stars, TV stars or pop stars are, you know, casting, you're a little bit kind of like, ooh, can they actually sing? You know, she's someone who can actually sing. I'm very interested in the fact that you said she acted it so well as well, because I think the worry is, especially with pop singers, you might find that they're not able to act the role even if they can sing it.
Well, her accent was flawless. Her accent was in some ways better than some of the other people in the show. She was very moving. I would never have thought she was off the X Factor. So my guess is she's probably from musical theatre in the first place.
Possibly. I don't know anything about her background.
But she did Bodyguard as well, remember?
Yeah,
so
it's not her first musical.
She hasn't come to this from nowhere, like straight from X Factor.
Yeah, I think what I liked about Bettina Miller, she was such a good comedian. She was so funny. I don't know whether that's down to the book or the way that she interpreted it, but she oozed this sort of...
Yeah, probably early on it's probably down to both.
Yeah.
Now they have a standard script to go to. A lot of the funny lines are in the script. She wasn't as physical as Bettina Miller, especially in Raise Your Voice. There's a bit where there's a dance movement Bettina did where she crouched low down on the floor, which was from the film, I think.
Yeah.
And that wasn't in the stage show, sadly.
Yeah, I think maybe some of Bettina's choices were more based on Whoopi Goldberg. Whereas I'd be interested to see if there's any similarity between Alexandra Burke's performances and Bettina Miller's.
This is just a little kind of whatever NB in Latin is short for. And I think I'd mentioned this on the show before. If the show has ended, please wait until the cast have done their bows.
So here we're talking about audience etiquette in theatres.
Yes. Don't open your Doritos.
Oh, I think it's so rude to leave before the cast have bowed. They've just entertained you for 2 to 3 hours. They've put their heart and soul into it. You should stay and you should applaud them. It really bugs me when people leave. Okay, I know you probably got a tube to catch or whatever. You should stay and applaud the performers that have put massive effort in. It really bugs me when people leave before. It's rude.
People had to move and stand up for these people to get out.
And that ruins other people's enjoyment
if I was
as well.
one of those people, I would say, go back to your seat. The show's not over yet.
I'm not sure I'd be that brave, but I do feel very, very kind of angry when people leave towards the end.
The ushers shouldn't allow it. But then I guess you're infringing on human rights and things. And
well, I'm not saying they should be forced to stay, but I think you should stay. I think you should be polite and you should applaud a performer at the end of but they put masses of work into it. You should applaud them for their work. Yeah, I just think it's incredibly rude, but there's lots of things that really bug me today.
Recently Imelda Staunton has said that people should not eat in theatres at all, and she doesn't understand why people cannot survive 2 hours without shoving popcorn in their face and crisps and things. What's your view on that?
I don't know. The thing is, there's a huge argument that theatres would not be able to survive if they didn't sell refreshments and sweets and things. Save it for the interval. That's my view on this. I agree with her. It's incredibly irritating to perform to someone to be eating a lot of McDonald's in the audience or whatever, and to be really noisily eating. Not only does it ruin it for performers, but it ruins it for the other people watching. It's so incredibly irritating. Have your ice cream at the interval. You know, it's not difficult to
open your Doritos in the interval.
Eat at the interval, not halfway through somebody's ballad about whatever. Just eat at the interval. There's so many things that bug me when I go to the theatre nowadays. It's got worse and worse and worse. Remember when we went to see Gypsy? People talked during the overture.
Yes.
That made me so angry. It was some of the best music in the whole thing. I was like, just because the orchestra are playing and no one's singing doesn't mean you can talk all the way through. Oh, it really bugged me.
I think the lighting has a lot to do with it as well. I think lights in Gypsy, if I remember, they go down to half. This is a house light, so people think they can still have a natter because the show hasn't started because there's no one on stage. When I saw Matilda, one of the many times I saw Matilda, Act 2 opens in a way that the Mr. Wormwood, the father, comes out and gives a little kind of stand-up comedy thing and sings a song, and the house lights are down at half. And people still natter. If
the house lights haven't fully gone down yet, people just think, if they're in the dark, then that's fine. They think, right, the show's obviously started now. But it really annoys me. If the music has started and the performance has started, shut up. There are so many of these little niggly things that really bug. I mean, I've had friends on stage and phones have gone off. One of my friends was in Les Mis. I think he was understudying, so he was singing Javert that night, and someone's phone went off during Stars, and you'll think as a performer you're there concentrating, you have to follow the conductor, you have to make sure you're doing everything right on stage, and then someone's phone's going off and they're having a conversation.
Stay awake if you're doing Les Mis.
That's a point. But if someone's phone's going off and they're having a conversation to their mum in the middle of the show, that's what you're going to focus on, not what the MD's doing.
Have a conversation?
I can't remember. I'll ask him.
Who was the actor who's not with us anymore who played Harry Potter's uncle in the films?
I can't think of his name, but I do know
him. But he went into the audience and actually answered someone's phone when it went off.
There's somebody on Broadway. What happened last year?
Patti LuPone
yes.
picked up someone's phone in the show.
I think a lot more performers are taking a stand these days, and actually, but a show like Les Mis, you can't just stop halfway through and say, "Excuse me, do you mind?" You just can't.
You can sing it in recitative, and they wouldn't know the difference.
Excuse me, do you mind?
Turning off your phone. That was a little rant on theatre etiquette, and
I've actually grabbed the microphone off you. That's not acceptable.
Thank you, Antonia.
You're welcome
again for joining us. I'm going to hand you over now to the interview that I had with Tony Hatch and David Wood discussing Rock Nativity.
Musical Talk.
Hi David, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
And joining us also is a songwriting legend for pop music fans of Tudor Clark, and for me of a composer and songwriter of such TV themes as Neighbours, Crossroads, Emmerdale Farm, and the wonderful Mr. Tony Hatch. Hello Tony, welcome to Musical Talk.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. This is a real pleasure. I want to talk to you about Rock Nativity, it really does what it says in the tin. So I know very little about this project, so if the pair of you could start by telling me how this project came to be, really.
I think this will be fun because both our memories are fading now with age. And David will correct me, and I'll probably correct him as well.
Yeah.
But I do believe it started when Cameron McIntosh wanted to do a Christmas show, and called David first and said, "I'd like you to work with Tony Hatch, if that's all right with you."
Sure, you had no difficulty.
No.
Well, I was happy to do it, but I don't know whether it was Cameron's idea to do a rock pop musical version of the Nativity story. Was it you, David?
No, it wasn't me. Veronica Flint Shipman, who owned, with her husband, the Phoenix Theatre in those days, was putting on Winnie the Pooh every Christmas, and it was the Julian Slade version.
Or Disney?
Nothing to do with Disney. No, this was pre-Disney taking over Winnie the Pooh. And she wanted to have a show that she would put on alternate years, so that she just did Winnie the Pooh every 2 years. And whether it was her idea to do a nativity or not, or whether it was Cameron's, I don't know. Cameron had an office in the Phoenix at the time, which I don't think he was paying for. He was a bit naughty in those days. And but he got in touch with me because I had done by then a couple of children's shows, one of which he was very interested in and which he and I toured, which was The Hour and the Pussycat Went to Sea. He had also produced Tony's musical The Card, and so he was working with both of us, and I suppose he thought, well, put them both together. And so we all met at the Phoenix, if you remember, and there was this very strange occurrence whereby we all found out that all four of us, because Veronica Flint Shipman, Cameron, Tony and myself, and we all had property in Menorca. We all had a villa or something in Menorca, which was a coincidence, but it sort of felt that
it bonded us.
It bonded us. It
You
bonded
had
us.
somewhere to go and work in your separate ways, but still be close to one
Yeah,
another.
that's right. Yes.
Jumping ahead, and we can go back to the actual writing of it and so on, but it never actually got produced at the Phoenix Theatre. That never happened.
So when was this roughly?
Oh God, was it
1975, without any
75.
doubt. But we probably started work on it in 74,
Yeah.
didn't we?
Yes, I think that's right.
But 75 was certainly the first production in Newcastle.
Do you think Cameron was trying to do a Joseph in a way?
Or a superstar?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yes, I mean,
Or Godspell or something?
That's right. Well, certainly we felt. I remember when it was in Newcastle, because he got this production at the University Theatre Newcastle, which was quite a small theatre, which meant that when it happened, it was more Godspell in feel than Superstar. And certainly I remember sitting there one day, and the atmosphere in that theatre was very similar to a sort of Godspell atmosphere, and I remember thinking that was very exciting. The sad thing it was, in a way, that from then on, Cameron seemed to see that it would see it as a bigger show, and it ended up touring rather big theatres,
And quite a big company, but
people liked it. If we're honest, the title was probably against it, because in those days I think the word rock put off half the potential audience, and the word nativity put off the other half.
But it's a very strange thing, this, that the word rock is more acceptable in America as a certain genre of music, because believe it or not, Downtown, which I wrote for Petula, as you remember, that is counted as a rock song. And it's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it is not a rock song. But you couldn't call Rock Nativity Pop Nativity either. Much later, we did have another version, didn't we, David, called Making You Tomorrow, which played at Wimbledon. And
Yes, same show, same tour really, but Cameron decided to change the title.
Are you telling me Cameron made changes to something that you did?
Well, only the title. He called it Making You Tomorrow, which sounded a little bit moral rearmament-ish, probably, I don't know. I think it did quite well in Wimbledon. I remember there was the Saturday night in Wimbledon. It was great. It was very, very well received, but it never came into the West End, and it never did the function or fulfilled the function it was written for. but it has gone on, hasn't it? And I mean, it's still done quite a lot.
We still get school productions. We get quite a lot of those, not just from the UK, because I came across one in America. They asked for a supportive letter when they were doing a production. I can't remember what it was. I think it was California way somewhere. But it is a wonderful story. The way David managed to get all the important things, and the way we bent the dates as well, so that we had Herod, we had the villain of the piece, even though that's stretching history a bit, weren't you? But very important to the plot, you see, to have a baddie.
And were you, David and Tony, writing in a modern voice?
Not overtly, but certainly I wasn't trying to write old-fashioned language. I mean, it was all very accessible. And I remember the fact that Mary suddenly found herself to be pregnant and so on. There was a thing where there was an ensemble that was sort of whispering slightly rude things and giggling and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, I suppose there were modern connotations, but the lyrics were not overtly rock and roll. But,
no, I think that you rightly decided to take a middle course so that children could understand it, and adults the same way.
And it evolved as well too, because I remember there was one song which came in later, which I still think is one of the best songs we wrote, which is called "What Game Are You Playing, Lord?" which is actually quite a serious song, and it's not the sort of song that I would have put into a children's show, but it's actually very critical of God, if you like, plagues and all the nasties of the world. What's going on? And it's an angry song, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so from that point of view, I don't think that it was a childlike show, but it was always child-friendly. And in a way, I mean, maybe it was not, I don't know, it wasn't ahead of its time, because, as you say, you'd had Godspell and so on, but in a funny sort of way, I don't know, would people have taken children to see Superstar and Godspell? I don't know, in those days.
Not in those days. Joseph, yes, definitely.
Joseph, yes. Joseph was different. Joseph was very clever, in as much as it had been written for a prep school, hadn't it, originally, and it got gradually expanded, and so that became a family show. And I remember Cameron saying to me 25 years ago that he felt that what was really going to take off was, for want of a better expression, the family show. And by that he was talking about Joseph, which had been around for some time, Oliver, which had been around longer, but which of course he revived. But he was also, I think, thinking ahead to Mary Poppins, for instance, or to Shrek. What I found delightful about Rock Nativity, particularly in those early days in Newcastle, was when you had the school parties in, and then you also had the family audiences in at the weekend, and sometimes in the evening of a weekday you had just an adult audience, and yet it seemed to go with all of them. They seemed to ride along with it, and it was a very joyful show, and yet obviously it had its sad moments. And
it had its comic moments as well, because David made the shepherds a little trio or quartet, was it? I think it was a trio.
Yeah, I think so.
Or a group anyway of just hilariously simple people stuck up there on the mountain.
Yes, fed up,
cold,
yeah.
And he stumbled on this wonderful idea of shepherds counting sheep trying to get to sleep. It's just so silly.
When you did the music for this, if you knew that in the future it would be sung by kids, would you have approached it differently, do you think, or do you think it makes no difference?
Well, it's very interesting, actually, the development, because the first time we did it, it was quite different to how we developed. I don't know whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, but I went to see The Wiz, and I got a lot of inspiration from that. And I wouldn't say that I've nicked bits, but there is one song in the musical that's called, was it Hit the Road, Joe?
Yes, it had various titles. Hit the Road, Joe, the final title, I think, wasn't it?
And it's just with a riff that's just straight out of of The Wiz, because I thought The Wiz was a really
He's on
good
down
show.
the road, kind of.
Yes.
I'm a carpenter going to be taxed on a cold December day. I left my bench and the monkey wrench and I journeyed on my way. It's the roadshow, there's no turning back. It's the roadshow, get on down the track.
The development of it took it into another area altogether. And David was never totally happy about where we went. He preferred a lot of the simplicity that we'd put into the first version. And he felt, and maybe he's right, we'll never know really, will we? that some of our development of what I wanted, where I wanted to take the music and the feel and the rhythm wasn't quite as simple as he'd hoped for it.
If I said to a school they're doing the Rock Nativity, you might think it's like a sort of 20-minute cantata style piece, but this is actually, looking at the CD, it's a 71-minute, I'm guessing, through composed.
No, there's a lot of scenes.
I mean, if I'm honest, quite a lot of the scenes were cut rather ruthlessly when it was done in its second touring incarnation. Mainly, I mean, if we're honest, because the singers that were employed were more of the rock variety and had come not from theatre but from rock singing. And of course this was before the influence of Mackintosh and Lloyd Webber on the training of people to be in musicals. I mean, it was still at the time when people who could sing very well couldn't necessarily dance very well and probably couldn't act their way out of a paper bag. And this may have been the reason why a couple of the scenes, particularly the shepherd scene, got cut down quite a bit, because they couldn't do the comedy dialogue terribly well. But, of course, what you did get was some wonderful voices. I mean, we did have some tremendous and very exciting voices. And I think, to a certain extent, that helped. Because, I mean, Tony's absolutely right. I mean, there were versions of songs which became more sophisticated, that I wasn't quite sure whether that was right. Simply because I suppose I'd enjoyed the simplicity of the originals. Having said that, if you get me to sing something now, if you were to look in at the CD and say, "Oh, hum that tune," I would probably sing the second tune, more really, because it's become ingrained in me now. And then I'd have to think of what was the simpler version.
I can't remember the original tune of "Don't Be Afraid," but I can always sing the "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid, you're a good man."
Yes, well, the original one was the other way around. It was da 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 da.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid, you're a good man.
Yeah, it was quite different in the
Follow the Star was much simpler originally. Da 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 da. Follow the brightest star.
Yes.
But then what was it?
When there's da 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 da
da da da da da.
Come on now, glimmer and go, where it leads we must go. We're gonna follow the star, over the mountains and over the sea, no matter how far.
How much did having rock musicians come on board when that moment came? Was a lot of the score change? Did they suggest ideas or beats, or was it all?
No, we worked exactly the opposite to that. We said we just wanted a group of musicians that would interpret the music the way it was conceived by us. And there's a little story that goes hand in hand with this, that I'd said to Cameron, who was our director? Was it Gareth? No.
Well, our director was Gareth Morgan, who was running the theatre in Newcastle, father of Abby Morgan, who is now, much lauded screenwriter and television writer. Yes, Gareth Morgan, and Ewan Williams was the musical director.
And I said to Gareth, what it would be good is to find a group of musicians who are used to playing together. I think they found a band. I can't remember the exact name of the band, but it was certainly one of those sort of tribute bands. And they could also do pubs. They had a whole repertoire of popular music. They could do anything. And so I heard them play a couple of things, and I'd also put something in front of them, and they played these items through very well. They could read sufficiently, so I knew we were on the right road there. And I just sat down with them. I said, just tell me your names then, who's who. And got to the bass player, and he said, my name's Sting. And I said, oh, pleased to meet you, welcome. And he said, well, I hope we'll be all right. And I said, I'm absolutely certain that, we're going to do some extra rehearsal with you, obviously. But there's only 5, we just get into it. And he was marvellous. And then he went off and married the leading lady. And always blamed David and I for that.
Yeah. Yes, Mary.
Frances Tommelty.
Frances Tommelty, who played Mary, was suddenly heavily involved with the bass player called Sting.
But he was a music teacher originally, wasn't he?
Well, he was. He was in a primary school in Newcastle, and he was still teaching when he was playing on this, and because they were a band that played in their spare time.
Well, so many musicians do that, teach and perform a bit.
Of course, yes. Musically, what fun did you have with the score? I mean, were you emulating...
The Newcastle version was the first score. And then, was it a year later that Cameron said, well, we'd do a touring version?
Yeah, well, it opened almost exactly a year after we'd opened.
In Newcastle
before.
or in
yes,
Leeds, was it?
And the most significant thing was that we'd been at the Playhouse in Newcastle, which was this smallish, quite relatively intimate theatre.
Not the first time around.
Yes.
First time around, University Theatre.
That's right. Well, that's what I mean. Yes. It became called the. It's now called the Playhouse. Yes, I don't know quite why, but it was the University Theatre.
It doesn't have the same ring to it as.
Well, it doesn't. That was what happened. They suddenly decided it was going to be mainly professional thing. And although it was owned by the university, they would call it the Playhouse. But in that time, Tony's absolutely right. It was the University Theatre. And then the following year, we were, as it were, promoted to the Theatre Royal, Newcastle, which of course much bigger, and Cameron had decided that was where it would start its tour because it would be in its home territory, as it were. But it meant that the whole show was conceived on a much bigger scale, and whether or not that was a healthy decision, I remains.
You rest your case.
I rest my case. I'm not absolutely sure. I do remember that on the first night there were certain problems with cables, weren't there? Because in those days they didn't have radio mics.
We didn't use a lot, actually, to be truthful.
No, that's right.
We had just the principles, maybe. But it would have to be a mic on a stand. You couldn't walk around with a mic.
And then, well, they used to sometimes take them off, and they had the cables, and they were just hand mics and cables, and which they were all used to using, I suppose, in their solo acts and so on. But suddenly, Spaghetti Junction happened. I remember where they were all tied up and tangled up because they hadn't been used to moving around. I don't know. By the time they got used to it, it was a lovely show, and it played in several big theatres. But it obviously didn't do the business that Cameron had hoped for.
We did do a TV version as well.
Well, we did 2, didn't we?
Well, the first one we did was when we got to Glasgow.
Yes.
Was it Glasgow or Edinburgh?
Glasgow.
Probably Glasgow, because that's where the TV was based anyway.
That's right. It was Scottish television.
It was David Bell, wasn't
David
it?
Bell, who later ran London Weekend comedy and so on, but he was up there then and was very keen on it, and they came into the studio, wasn't it? It was our cast.
We actually did it in a studio, and with their set, not our set.
No, that's right. And that went out nationally, I think. But then you went to live in Ireland.
And did another version. A concert platform version.
Yes, at Cork Opera House.
Yes, with a narrator.
Concert versions, TV versions, small intimate versions, bigger versions. I mean, what next? A film? Or
we always
site-specific version in Jerusalem?
Every year we say, we really ought to try and get a production going again, and I honestly think that it would work. The music, I mean, Tony's music has always been timeless, I think, in the sense that it doesn't date or say that it's a specific thing. It's very uplifting and exciting. The number that starts the second half, Glory, Glory, which is very much a gospel number, isn't it? And I mean, that is really great, and that had people getting up and standing up and joining in and so on. No, great fun, and I honestly think that it could work, could be done.
Glory, glory, sing the Christmas story, sing of joy and peace on earth. We really want to tell you, glory, glory, sing the Christmas story, celebrate the Saviour's birth.
I think the score is lovely for additional reasons. And there are two beautiful pieces of music in it, which are pure recitative, but in the pop genre. One is the Magnificat, early in Act 1, and the other one, which always I just love it, and that's the Nunc Dimittis.
Yeah.
And that goes into what other part? Nunc Dimittis into Simeon, isn't it?
Yes, and it becomes a song, leads into a song.
But there again, my inspiration was Elton John. If you listen to the construction of Magnificat and Nunc Dimittis, it's pure Elton. It was just the melody just goes where he would have, if he'd sat down, he would have done exactly that.
Peacefully I'll pass away. Now I have seen what I've seen today. This one boy looking like the rest, but specially blessed, has brought me joy. Peacefully God's battle won, and the world set free by his only Son. This one light sees glory shine. He's yours and mine if we unite. Peacefully I pray you live. May the people see all you have to give.
It's very simple, and I remember I did a lyric because it was quite unusual, I think, for Tony, because am I right in thinking it was virtually the first time that you had set somebody else's lyrics, which came done, as
Yes.
it were,
Yeah.
rather than someone taking a tune and putting words to it?
Absolutely right.
Peacefully, I decided, I don't know why, but I decided it would be a little challenge of doing a rhyme scheme which was slightly different, where you had if you had 4 lines, it was lines B and C, which rhymed, and A and D, and round the outside and so on. There was a song that Perry Como sang that had a similar thing, which I always thought was rather clever. But it was very, very simple, wasn't it? And it was a deceptively simple tune. One hesitates to say that, but because what's going on under the tune and so on is so important. But it was very affecting at that moment, and Simeon doing it. And I remember the Magnificat too, which obviously Mary sings, and which is I didn't have to do much on that because it was St James's Bible version. I didn't actually write the lyric for that. It was a very respectful tune, and yet it was totally within the spirit of the whole thing. And I think that that was not an easy thing to do necessarily, because the Magnificat, you could say, well, it would stick out like a sore thumb because it was straight from a church service. It just came out of the scene perfectly naturally. My soul doth magnify the Lord.
And it's very, I don't know, I get lucky with tunes. They just land in the right place. Just the construction of the notes, the sequence of notes on that first line are very uplifting in themselves. It goes, my soul doth magnify the Lord. So this word magnify is on 3 notes that have just come out of the root, and it always knocks me out just to listen to that.
So, did you two work together in the same room, or was it one thing first?
I write them and then come to his house, or we meet somewhere and...
Yes, we can't stand each other. We couldn't be in the same room together. What was quite useful, I think, was that I would be able to send something and Tony would be able to look at it, and if he didn't like it, he'd be able to say, well, I don't think that quite works, or whatever. But you were terribly accommodating, I must say, because most times you'd come out with a tune and say, is that all right? So,
obviously, we did work together in the process of rehearsal, because the development of a piece should be major at that point, when you're actually watching it played and feeling it. And so David and I would work together, but he was rewriting bits and cutting bits and moving bits around, which didn't really need to involve me. But he would just say to me, does this work all right? Can we do this musically?
And did you ever have to tell Tony No, I don't like that tune. If you did, how did that feel for you, telling one of the, the greatest pop writers of all time? That
No, I don't think that happened. No, occasionally on the second time round, I would actually say, well, if I'm honest, I mean, he said that earlier. If I'm honest, I like the original version, but that doesn't mean to say that I didn't like the new version. It was just that the appropriateness of it, and I wasn't quite sure where we were heading, because it was as though the whole thing was becoming. I think the word simplicity you used, and I think there is something about the simplicity of the story, although God knows it's a very, it's not a simple story really, but it's a story that people know, it's a story that people respect, and there was just a feeling that the purity of it, the moment it became whizzed up, I wasn't sure whether it was going to feel right. Now I'm absolutely happy with it.
I like it because I think it's got a very good balance of musical styles in it. It is not all one particular style, definitely.
If the show were to have a big production now, what would you two do to it?
I would attempt to keep what we have more simple than more complicated. I wouldn't want to add anything to it. I'd like to slow some of the tempos down. I do feel that it's one of all our problems. When something doesn't feel right, we then play it faster because we think that's going to make it right. And I used to spell this out to my rhythm sections on all the records that we were making. I said it obviously doesn't feel good because it's a rush. And so I would like to get back to slowing down the tempos and making things feel a little easier.
Yes, I don't know. I would probably look at the dialogue, the book again. I mean, it's a long time since I even read it, and it may well be that some scenes were slightly overwritten. It may be that there was no need for some of them. I don't know.
Very good structure though, and the final flight and escape is very well constructed. Doing a classic thing of taking little bits, little tunes, motifs out of earlier pieces and string them all together.
The second half gets a bit darker, and the whole thing of the flight into Egypt takes over.
David again makes comment at the end of Act 1 when we go into this marvellous thing, because the song is what a way to welcome him, because this is the king, the most amazing thing that's happened in the world, and we're just really throwing it away. The public did at that time. That was his message.
Yes, and he comes into a stable or whatever. And so there is an irony. I remember it was quite difficult to explain sometimes to the people singing the song that it was an ironic lyric, and that it had to be acted in that way, rather than just singing "What a way to welcome him," as though it was totally the feeling they were meant to have. And also this thing of finishing at the end of Act 1. Obviously, from our point of view, it's quite unsatisfactory if you do that, because really the whole point is the second half, in a sense. But I can see why people, if they're doing it as an alternative to a nativity play in a school, well, you normally end up on that bit, don't you? I mean, nativity plays don't go beyond the birth, really. And the fact that you can do that, I think, makes it approachable and accessible too. There was a single, wasn't there, Tony, or was it with two or three tracks on? Single on Pie.
With Making You Tomorrow on the A side, with Helen Chappell.
Yes, Helen Chappell.
And the B side was Glory Glory. That's
right.
all that we've ever recorded and would be in the archives now.
Yes, Helen Chappell played Mary in the touring version, and she had a big, strong rock voice, that's right. Christopher Biggins was in it for a time, do you remember that? Christopher Biggins, who had played Winnie the Pooh, and Cameron...
That's a sight I'd like to see.
Well, he was rather good as Winnie the Pooh. He was rather good in this too, I think, although I never saw him, because it was only for a couple of weeks when somebody was ill, and Cameron said, get the train up to Leeds or wherever it was and be a shepherd.
And Cameron's known Biggins forever.
Forever, that's right.
He was a natural choice. Well, a slightly more avuncular Herod than we'd had before, wasn't it?
Yes. I don't know. Did he play Herod or did he play a shepherd? Maybe he played both. Maybe he doubled it. Yes, I think he may have done it.
And I think Biggins was even in the Joseph film that they did, wasn't he?
Was it? Well, he seems to get into everything, yeah. No, well, he was... I first knew Biggins when he was about 16 years old, and he was an unpaid ASM at Salisbury Playhouse. And I was in a review. He was already the life and soul of the party, who was the sort of social secretary for all the events in the theatre. And then he went off to Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, where coincidentally he was in the same year as Jackie, who became my wife, so she knew him very well. So we've kept in touch over the years, but it was just one of those funny things, because his first London job, Biggins, was for me in the Etiquette Went to Sea, where he played the head jumbly, as well as a rather grumpy octopus in the first scene. He didn't really enjoy being the octopus, I don't think. But no, he's lovely. Good luck to him.
You can always tell us an opening night when Biggins is in, because the laughter just sort of echoes around the whole of the West End.
Yes, it's fatal. One wants to keep him away, really, because it puts other people off laughing, I'm afraid.
Poor Biggins.
Well, off the record this is. But there was, I think it was Quentin Letts, he went to an opening night of something, and it was terrible. He said, but Biggins was laughing in all the wrong places.
Of course, yes. Well, gentlemen, it's been wonderful to have my eyes and soon my ears opened to your rock nativity. I hope it continues to have a life, because it does sound like a true labour of love for the pair of you. And Tony Hatch, thank you very, very much for appearing on Musical Talk. And David Wood, as always, a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Love and understanding, make a new tomorrow, make a new tomorrow, try to make it happen. Try to make it happen. Try to make it happen.
This episode of Musical Talk was presented by Nick Hudson and Antonio Gentili and edited by Nick Hudson. Copyright Musical Talk 2016, apart from the songs where the copyright persists with the original creators.